we're explaining here, what does it mean holy? That the Jewish people, it says they make, that you will be made holy, God, in the midst of the Jewish people. Let's go back to the original sentence. Where's the sentence over here? Here it is. Is this here? 1 second, 1 minute, 1 minute. I'll go back a little bit. Here we go. Here we go. Just 1 second. We'll go back to this sentence. And I will be made holy, says God. God says to the Jewish people, I will be made holy betoch, inside of the Jewish people. Okay, that's what God says. I will be made holy inside of the Jewish people. So the Rebbe asks the question. This is the first Rebbe of Chabad, right? What does it mean that I will be made holy? Somebody has something running over here, and I'm going to have to turn somebody's, whatchamacallit, off. 1 minute, 1 minute. Who is this? Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. Here we go. Okay, so what does it mean that God will be made holy? God isn't holy already. What does it mean? What does it mean that will be made holy within, inside of the Jewish people? What does it mean to be made holy? So the whole essence of the Jewish people are called Am Kadosh, the holy nation. And it's a very essential part of Judaism. Of the commandments, before we make a commandment, we say, Asher Kidishanu, you made us holy with your commandments. And the land of Israel is called the Holy Land. And the Torah is called holy. Right? And the Jewish, okay, so what does it mean? The temple, holy temple. What does it mean holy? What does it mean the word holy? So the simple meaning of the word holy is to be separate, to be separated. Right? A man marries a woman, in Hebrew, it's called kiddushin. He separates her from the rest of the world. She can't marry anybody else. She's separated. That's what the Holy Temple means, that it's separated from all the other buildings in the world. It's not like the other buildings. And the same thing, the Jewish people, they're different from all the other nations in the world. They were chosen by God, that they're God's representatives in the world. They're different. And the land of Israel is different than all the other lands in the world. It's holy. Even the land is holy. It's different than any other place in the world. It can't be treated like every other nation. It can't be different nation, different the category of land of nation. What does it mean that God is holy? So God means, when we say that God is holy, of course we know God is different. What's the question? You don't understand what it means. You might think that God is spiritual. But the fact is, all the angels, they also say that God is holy. In other words, God is different from them also. And in fact, it goes even more, that there's 3 general types of angels. So there's one type of angels that say that God is holy, another type of angels which say that God is holy, holy. And there's another type of angels which say that God is holy, holy, holy. The God is the God of the the hosts of the creations. Hashem Tzabaot, it says. So what does it mean, the 3 types? So the Rebbe he says, okay, and first of all, he says, what does holy mean? So the Rebbe explains that there's 2 types of godliness. There's one type of godliness which is relevant to the creation, spiritual and physical. That's called Memali, how God fills the worlds. And that makes all the angels and all the spiritual worlds, and there's higher spiritual worlds, and then there's higher spiritual worlds than those. In general, there's 3 levels. There's what's called the upper heaven, the lower heaven, and the world, physical world. So the physical world is a pretty big miracle. The upper heaven is even more than that. And the heaven, which is above that, is even more. What makes it a big miracle? That they're aware of how distant God is from them, how unlike God is from any creation. And we're going to talk about that in a moment, right? The highest of the 3 worlds, they say that God is they realize how far God away is, how far away God is. And the second, they don't really realize it, but they realize how far away they are from realizing how far away God is. And the third, they just sort of realize how far away they are from being far away from realizing how great God is. That's the three things. We'll learn about it. We haven't learned about that yet. But what we did learn and what we left off yesterday was another example which is used holy, and that is the Nazir. The Nazir. The Nazir is called, his hair is called holy. His hair is called holy. So when we explain the worlds, I just skipped a little bit. When we explain the worlds, we explained that all of the worlds, spiritual worlds, these different levels, that's all what's called how God fills the world. But God, how he creates all these worlds, that's what's called how God surrounds the worlds or is above the worlds. Sovev Kalmi. And that's called God's name or God's Shekhinah. In other words, how God is relevant to creating the world. He's above all creation, but he's above, well, that's like God's speech, it says in the Bible, in the Torah. But that's above the whole business. And then, of course, there's God himself, the essence of God, that's totally incomprehensible. Okay, so we have the creator, which is called how God surrounds all the worlds, and then we have the creation, all these different levels of creation. So then we got to this thing about the Nazir. The Nazir is a person that decides he wants to be holy. He wants to be holy. So he separates himself from wine and from defiling himself for a dead body, doesn't defile himself. And he grows his hair long. He grows his hair long. Samson, it says, was a Nazir. Some say Shmuel a Navi. Shmuel was a Navi. And a Nazir, his hair is holy. He's not supposed to cut his hair all his life, unless his hair gets like too heavy on his head, it's just too much, then he can cut it off. And there's a whole process that you go through. That's if you're a Nazir forever, but you can become a Nazir for a month. There's a lot of laws. There's a whole tractate about Nazir, what happened. But the main thing is that his hair is holy. Oh, so why is his hair holy? He's holy. Why is he here? So the Rebbe gives a whole explanation. Let's see where we get this over here. Oh, the Nazir. So we said the Nazir is holy. Why? So we explained that that's just like an example in this world of these two levels we talked about. God surrounding the world, being above all creation, or let's say, for a simple term, the creator and the creation. In order to jump from the creator, who the creator is above infinite. All the upper spiritual worlds, they're infinite, right? What's called the lower heaven, that's infinitely more real, if you want to call it, than this world is. And it's like dimensions of reality, and that's nothing compared to what's called the upper heaven. The upper heaven, and this upper heaven, that's infinitely greater than what's below it, but it's infinitely nothing compared to what's above it. But the jump from the creator to the creation is a much greater jump. I mean, how can you say different levels of infinity? But anyway, that's what we're going on. I did something wrong over here. 1 minute. There we go. Okay, so the jump from the creator even to the highest level of creation is an infinite jump, and that's compared to hairs coming from the brain, from the head. Why are there hairs on your head? Who decided there should be hairs on your head? What's the big thing of hairs on your head? And the hairs of the head have a special a category, hairs of your head. Just like the Kohanim had to cut their hairs all the Levites, they had to cut their hairs all the time, and the Levites had to cut their hairs. It's a special thing with hairs, right? Hairs. So hairs of the head of a Nazir are called holy. Why are they holy? Because they represent the hairs that come from God. What are the hairs that come from God? all the creative force that comes from the creator to create all these worlds, even the highest of the worlds. Those are called hairs. And just like a hair is incomparable to intellect, this is, according to Kabbalah, the hairs are very contracted aspects of your consciousness. So just, I mean, you can cut a person's hair, he doesn't feel, he lost his consciousness or lost something like that. So it says, because in order to create the worlds, it's like hair. The same way as, I mean, nowadays maybe they can analyze hair, they have DNA and stuff. But generally speaking, you have a piece of hair, you can't tell anything about a person from a piece of hair. I mean, it's even hard to say if it's a hair of a person or a hair of a dog or a hair of a, I mean, maybe if you really make an analysis, you would say. This is the same thing. You, from the world, you can't really know what God is at all. But you can know that God is. That God is. And that's these hairs that come out. That's the holiness of God comes into the world through these hairs. But because they're so contracted, and the whole world is an amazing big miracle, right? But on the other hand, because it's so contracted and it's so far away from true reality, and that it gives the appearance that this is reality, that that's all there is, that there's no brains or anything. That's all there is. That's all God is, just hairs. In other words, all there is to God is just the world, or more exactly, me. So it says, and that was said. Oh, by the way, I think I made a mistake, by the way. Yesterday, I talked about this. It is a sentence from Daniel that he says that the hairs on his head are like white wool. It's a sentence from Daniel, but it's a sentence that he said, I think, to Nebuchadnezzar's successor. I think it was his son, Belshazzar, which is later on, not the big vision with the statues. This is another vision that was said later. It's not that important, but it was wrong when I said. Okay, so these hairs are an example of holiness, but, and here we go. Now we're getting up to where we are now. But they are also the source of evil, how evil can be existing in the world because God is so contracted his light. 1 second. Yeah. His light and his creative power. And so therefore there can be nurture to evil. So let's see, we go ready with this. Oh, this is pretty good over here. Listen to this. So there's a thing that says, that's what it says, that evil people, they look at the Yetzer Hora and it seems like a little hair. They could have conquered it like a little hair. And it says that the tzaddikim, they look at the word tzaddikim, nidme lahem kahar. So the tzaddikim, it seems to them after they pass away, or that the Yetzer Hora, the evil inclination, was like a mountain. And the evil people, the same Yetzer Hora, look to them like a hair. It says why? Because it seems to them like a hair, because the reason they were able to do evil was because it was such contracted godliness, and it was, so to speak, God was so absent, it was just like a little hair. So therefore, they felt free to do whatever they want to. Right? There was just they felt that they were the only real reality, so they did what they want. Which is not the case. Here it says the tzaddikim, call Isa, even the smallest forbidden thing, seemed to them to be not like a hair. They didn't look at it like a hair, that's all there is to God is there, but it seemed to be like a mountain. In other words, they were very, very, how do you say, they made a tremendous effort, like climbing a mountain. They made a tremendous effort to avoid bad. They didn't look at the little hairs of God like they are just hairs and that's all there is to God. They looked at these little hairs as just a small, tiny example of what God is, and they are not interested in the hairs, but in God. And so therefore, all the little hairs and this constriction of God and the concealment of God, they treated it with very great caution, like a mountain that separates you from Which is not the case. Sovivkom. That's all mamalikom. That's how God fills the world, which is not the case. God Himself, which that we called Sovivkom, how God surrounds the world. That it's impossible to be there to be from the essence of God. There can't be any cause or effect or contractions or concealments, but that all stuff comes by means of these hairs. And these hairs depends on the upper holiness of God. So what did God do? He created a world, and purposely He created a world by means of His speech, which we compare the speech like to these hairs. In other words, like hairs come from intellect. It's a very small amount of intellect. Also, a person's speech is just a small amount of his intellect, right? That's just another metaphor for the same thing. But here with these hairs, we're saying it's possible to convert them. That's the idea of the Nazir, that his hair becomes holy. All of the holy. So therefore, the whole holiness of God depends on the world. The world, taking the world, which the world is like hairs, but transforming it like the Nazir does, that these hairs become holy. In these hairs, Talui depends the holiness of God specifically. Mamali Kalmim, that the world is that God fills the world can be transformed, and he contracts himself to fill the world. This can be transformed to reveal not the contraction, but the contractor, the God Himself, like the Nazir did, to Yafli Lahazir, that he took the world and He made it into a holy thing, like the hairs. That's that. So therefore, this commandment of the Nazir, this hints at what's very, very high source, Nazir Ola Lamakar, that he goes up to a very, very high source. Good. Okay, so what's the point of what we're talking about over here? What's the point? You cannot take the world at face value. You have to understand that this world is just like the tip of a huge, huge holy iceberg. And all we see is the tip of the tip of the tip, right? Like hairs come out from the hair, the head of the a tremendous genius, holy person. All you see is just a little hair. I don't know if I told you this. I mean, it's I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't even mention, but my wife one time she would like to travel around, so we went to Nepal. Nepal is a very Buddhist place. Buddhist. Every house has a little sort of a shrine in their backyard, a little sort of a. Anyway, so our tour guide, he would always talk about, Buddha. I don't know if it's permissible to say his name, to tell you the truth, because it's idolatry, really idolatry, right? It's like, anyway, so he made this big thing. He thought he would really, impress us, and he said that there's this big, huge a temple that they have for Buddha. This whole entire, it's like temple. It's like 4 city blocks long, and it's wide. And then they have this big Buddha that's laying. I didn't go in, but I saw pictures of it. A big Buddha that's laying there, that made of gold or something, and he's laying down. And this is, how he was when he received this. Anyway, so he looked at us and he said, and we actually have, there's one place where it's preserved the hairs, 3 hairs from the beard of Buddha. He said this with such awe, and like he was revealing to me the deepest possible secret that could possibly be revealed. He was like doing me this tremendous favor and revealing me. So, okay, what's the point of the thing? The point I'm trying to say is a hair, it was a bad example. I shouldn't have brought it, but I did. A hair somehow or other is representative of its source. Now, a normal person like me could say, do me a favor and get rid of these hairs. That's the thing you just throw in the garbage. But to him, no, what are you talking about? That these things are worth, who knows, billions of dollars. If people would give their lives, they would fight wars. Who knows? Somebody stole one of his hairs. They would fight a big war that 1 million people die, and they're all going to. The idea of the point I wanted to bring out is that hairs, which are seemingly nothing to do whatsoever, but because you know where the source is, so it has a tremendous importance. In this case, it was idolatry, but tremendous importance. Here, what the Rebbe is saying, that the whole world can be big idolatry. The whole world, if you start to pay too much attention to it, but if you understand where the source is, namely that it all comes from God, then you can take the hairs and make them holy. And that's what we're doing in the world. In other words, don't reject the world just because it's so deceiving. Says the Rebbe, no, that's the whole point, is to reveal godliness in the world, the source of the whole thing. True, the world is just like a little hair from whatever, but its source is tremendously holy, and we can reveal the source. That's the point. So we have to look at the world as though it is just a little hair from the source, and we can reveal the source in the world. We can reveal pure, real reality in the world. Huh? In the world. It's like if a person, his father went missing or something like that, and somebody comes and says, "Listen, I brought your father back from captivity. Yes, here's a hair. Oh, a hair. What is this?" So if you say, "Listen, the fact is, I took this hair from your father. He's in captivity, and he still is alive." Oh, then this hair is something, right? Then you'll keep it and preserve it. But that's not your father. But you know that it comes from your father. The same thing. The world is just a hair. It shows that God exists. But God is, so to speak, in captivity. He's concealed from us. We're really the ones in captivity. But God is concealed. It says when we're in captivity, God is in captivity. It says Galus Shechina. So we can reveal it. That's it. So it says that's the Rebbe wants to tell us that God does exist. That's the point. And that our existence comes totally from God, and God wants us to reveal his existence in the world to show how tremendously important this world is. So it's the angels know that God exists, and they feel it, and they know that it's an approachable thing. God is not just existing so that, for religious purposes or whatever, so that we'll be able to build big shrines or something. God exists because he wants to be revealed, the creator in the creation. And when that happens, Maimonides says, but he brings a sentence from Jeremiah, that all of the religions in the world will all realize they just made mistakes. I mean, they were serious and they were, they were sincere and honest, whatever, but they were mistaken. They were simply mistaken. That the whole world, they thought that somehow or other, that God is something like the world. Something like the world. He's like a big hair or a big something. But the fact is, God's reality is it's a real reality. And it's not just real reality, it's 4 times real. Real. That's the upper worlds, the angels, they realize this. And that's what it says. Okay, that's what it means that the first group of angels, they say that God is holy. These are what's called the burning up angels. Come over, like it says in the sentence in the Gomorrah and Chulin. These are the angels that Isaiah saw. The Inyan is that these are the angels, the highest angels, which they're in the world of Bria. Remember we said there's Bria, and then there's Yetzirah, and then there's Asiya. So it says, and Asiya, there's also angels, but that's the spiritual part of Asiya. That's sometimes called the 70 chieftain angel. So it says that these are the highest level of angels. Let me get my pointer over here. Shabbat of Bria, that the world of Bria, Shisham, that there is revealed Chabad, Chachma, Bin, and Das of God. That's like the head. Liot, to be. Remember we said that there's like in the human body, there's a head and there's the body and then there's the legs. So the head, that corresponds also, the whole creation is made in the form of man. So this is the upper aspect of the creation, the world of Bria, that's like the head. That's the highest. And the body, that's the world, that's Bria. And the body, that's like Yetzirah. That's like the heart and the emotions. And the legs, that's like the world of Asiya. So the highest aspect, the angels, which are in the highest level, which that's called Bria, they say holy. We're just explaining what the vision is that Isaiah saw. So Isaiah saw these angels saying holy, and these are the angels of the world of the dimension of reality, which is called Bria, and that corresponds to God's what's called intellect. Liot and Neshamos, that these souls which are in the world of Bria and the angels which are there, they recognize the greatness of God. Like we said before, in the idea of Mamalik Homim, how God fills all the worlds. That the life is a force of God can be divided into 3 general categories. What's called the upper heaven, that's like the head, so to speak, of God. That's the world of Bria, intellect of God. Ganei Tachton, the lower heaven, that's like the emotions of God. That's the world of Yetzirah. And Olam Hazeh, this physical world, that's the world of Asiya. That's the 3rd level. Okay, Dugmas is something like the head and the body and the feet. Remember? If so, okay. the Seraphim, these angels, which are called the burning up angels, that they come from the highest level, which is called the world of Bria, that over there, that's what's called the upper heaven. Hey, Masikim, they can grasp the greatness of God, the Ikar Hasaga, and their main understanding is Zeh, how it is that God is holy. They recognize how it is that God is holy. What does it mean that he's holy? That he's removed from them. They understand it. The Ikar Hasaga, and their main understanding is how that God is holy and separate from them. That God is incomparably more real than the highest of the highest worlds. But they realize it. And this is the source of their life force of life that comes from God. And that's already, they're close to the source of this level of godliness, which is called, excuse me one second, how God fills all the worlds. One minute. Oh. There we go, good. And it is by means of tzimtzum, of a tremendous contraction. Atzum, tremendous contraction. That's like we said, the hairs coming out from the head. That's this highest world of Bria. They realize that they're infinitely far away from the Creator. But they are the beginning of what we call mamalikomim, how God fills the worlds. This is drawn all of the awareness of God and all of the upper worlds and the lower worlds, etc. Of a who, but God Himself, who is Kodesh and Muvdal, God is separate from them. The Leis Machshav, and there's no thought of them that can grasp Him at all. So the highest worlds, in the Bria, they realize how far away they are from God. And we're going to see that the world below them, that they don't realize how far away they are from God, but they realize that they are far from realizing how God is. Right? The upper world, they realize how far God is away. And the world below them, the world of Yetzirah, they realize how far away they are from Bria. So they realize how far away they are from realizing how far away they are. Okay, but in this upper world is, he enlivens them. This is called Sovikomim. But the life force that they receive from God Himself, they realize that God, He surrounds all the worlds, and this aspect of God, they can't grasp at all. This is surrounding them, and this is what's holy. So they realize that God is enlivening them, and they know that they're alive, but they have no idea where it's coming from. But they're aware, these angels, clearly, they understand that God is totally incomprehensible. Totally, it's not even in the same level as understanding. It's like trying to explain mathematics to a rock or something, right? So I don't know, maybe this is an example. I don't know if this is an example. Let's say you have, animal consciousness and plant consciousness and rock consciousness. So you try to explain mathematics to an animal. So it could be the animal just doesn't understand. You try to explain it to a plant, right? And a plant, let's say plant has consciousness. So the plant is like, but at least the plant looks at the animals and says, whoa, I'm far away from their amazement. The animals are amazed. And the plant consciousness, they're far away from even being amazed. And rock consciousness, that's far away from being far away from it. Okay, anyway, the highest level, says, Lo Sheniti, therefore it says by God, I never changed. God never has any changes. There's no up, there's no down whatsoever. That's what's called Soviv Kolmim. And that God says, I am first, I am last. God creates the whole business, but God is so unlike any of His creations that it doesn't change at all. That the reality is so unreal of the worlds, it's created from such a contracted level. Now, we can't really understand what this is. There's no way we can understand what it is. And that's what exactly we're saying, that even the highest of angels don't understand it, but they're excited about it. When we think about this, when the angels think about this, all of a sudden the angels, they start to burn up with a tremendous fire because they want to come closer to God. God is not something that's just far away. It's like a poor person thinking about a multi-billionaire, right? A billionaire. So a poor person has nothing but to think about. But if a person, let's say he's a businessman and he has, let's say, a few $100,000 in the bank, so maybe he can, a person that has a few $1,000,000 in the bank, so he can appreciate a billionaire a little bit, how far away he is from it. Any example that I bring, it's not going to be sufficient. But what I'm trying to talk about is that God is infinitely good. That's the point. He's infinitely good. And the angels in the highest world, they realize that God's goodness is infinitely distant from them. But it's good. And therefore, they're burning up to get to this level of good. That's what it's called. They look at the glory of the King, that God is Sovev Kalmim, that God is holy from them. Therefore, they're called Seraphim. That's why these angels are called burning up angels, because they burn up with fire and desire for the greatness of God. That's what they say, one time holy. Who sheyesh lehem ratzon, they have one will. They have only one desire to be included in the Sovev Kalmim, in the source of all being. Lochen, therefore, Nemar Leam, therefore they're called, the angels are called burning up angels, and they stand above God. Remember we asked about this? Mavur, it's explained before. We have a question. How can we say that the angels, they stand above God? So it says because that in Yeshaya, the prophet Isaiah, he said that I saw God, and God was sitting on a throne, and he was sitting on a throne that was very high, and these burning up angels are standing above him. So they're standing above God who's sitting on the throne. What does it mean? God is sitting on a throne. Well, God is a chair. What does it mean? Well, Pirish, God, he saw the aspect of God which is called Aleph Daled Nun Yud, Adonai. Who bechinas midat, which you're not supposed to say, but in the sentence you can say it, and for teaching you say, who bechinas midat malchuto, this is God's kingship. Hini Yeshaya, Isaiah, he didn't understand, lo he sig bechinas midas malchuto. Isaiah couldn't grasp God's kingship. Kamoshi, as it is, a dayan lamaila, it's above being in the world. That we said before, remember that's the big dalid in the word God, in the word echad, one. Sham, there, lo hisig Yeshaya. God, he couldn't get this idea of what God is at all. It says about Moses that Moshe did. Moshe, it said that he saw the knot, K-N-O-T, the knot of God's tefillin on the back, and the knot of God's tefillin is the form of a dalid. That's the big dalid. That Moses did see it, but Isaiah didn't see it. Moses was the greatest of prophets, Isaiah. Rakasagaso, but the understanding of Isaiah, Yeshaya, was in the level of God's kingship as it is coming into the worlds. That's Mamalikom. We said that God's kingship, that's the essence of the Shekhinah, that's Sovev Kalmim, that's the source of everything. And Isaiah couldn't get this. He only could see how God came down into the chair, how God is coming down, so to speak. God's Malchut is coming down into the chair. And that he comes down into the world of Bria, which Bria is called the world of God's throne, like it's known. And that's when we say, when we pray, 3 times a day. In the second prayer of the Shemon Esrei, we say 19 prayers every day. So the second of these prayers, we say, Ata Gibur Le'olam Adonai. That first of all, there has to be Gvura, Ata Gibur. Gibura means power, that God has to conceal himself, contract himself, so to speak, contract his light. And then he can come down to this level of Adonai, this level of God's Adonai, how God comes into the world in order to create and enliven the world. That's a low level of God, but it's the highest of this low level of God. Hainu inyan the ant eshtamura, that you are known. This comes from the Zohar. You are known to be the master of everything. Adon. Shehu v'hu ki b'chinas zu. This level is drawn down to be the beginning of the creation of Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya, namely division. Bria is the world of creation. God started the spiritual creation, the worlds. That starts with the world of Bria, and that's where these angels, with the burning up angels are. And that's, so to speak, where God comes down into the world in order to create the world. That's called God coming into the throne. And this aspect of God, which is called Aleph Daled Nun Yud. And from there comes life into all the different worlds according to its level. That's means of Gevurus, of God's contractions and his power, so to speak, controlling his light. He contracts his light in order, God does not contract himself. That is his light to be Yochal Islavish, that God will be able to be in the worlds. Now you have to remember that God wants the worlds to be here. All this is very, very intentional by God. He wants there to be a world. And on this it says that Seraphim, the angels, are standing above God. What does it mean? The angels are standing above this aspect of God, Lamaila, from this aspect of God, which comes down into the world, this level of Adonai, Shehu Bechinas Mamalikom, how God fills the worlds, because the main desire of these angels is to understand and experience the source of that, the Soviv Kolmin. That God comes into the world, that's how God fills the worlds, that's Mamalikom. And the angels, they want to get up to the source of it, these angels, which they know is their source. That's called Soviv Kolmin, that's called Kodesh, that's what's called holy. So that's what the angels are screaming out, right? God, so to speak, is saying to them, here, you got life, you have life. And they say, no, we want holy. What's holy? How you're removed from us, not how you're coming down to us. We want you. We don't want your revelations. That's what the angels are saying. That their desire of these angels is to go out from their limit and all these contractions and concealment to Elecha, to God himself. He's the source of this life. They want to leave this level of Mimalik Kolmim, and to cling to the Soviv Kolmim, and to be Ki El Asher Rucham Poneh B'Chukatam, to connect themselves to what they desire, Yekra B'Shem Amud, and therefore because they are desiring so much, it says they're, so to speak, standing. So where they desire, that's where they are. That's what it means, that the Seraphim, they stand with their desire above him, above this name of Adoni. Okay, so generally speaking, let me say, I'll give an example. Think of an example. Here you have a person that he's in prison, right? He's in prison, and he's like the ideal prisoner. He helps out, but really what's in his mind, he wants to get out. That's all he's thinking about. He wants to get out. That's where it's in his mind. That's where he's at. That's really where he's at. He's not in the prison. He's not doing, he just does those things perfunctorily, whatever you have to do. But where his mind is, that's where he's at. That's what he's thinking about. His desire is to Soviv Kolmim. That's what it means, Kodesh, holy, one time. So because their whole desire is the essence of God, so that's where they're at. And so to speak, they're higher than this aspect of God that comes into the world, which is called Adonai, how God sits on the throne, and these all that they don't want that. The angels. So therefore, where their desire is, that's where they are. So that's what it means that they're standing above him. Adam, a person, that we are a small world, we also have these three levels. We also have these levels of Bria, Yetzir, and Asiya, which is intellect and emotions and action. The angels, it says the angels, each angel is only one aspect, but a person includes everything. That's why a person says, Nasa Adam. That's why when God is made, God said, let us make man. What does it mean? That God, man is the inclusion of the whole entire creation, all the angels and everything. So it's God put everything into each man. And that's what it means. So if so, each one of us also has, that's why we read about it in our prayers. We read about this in the prayers right before we say Shema Yisrael, talking about all these angels screaming out to God. What are we talking about, the angels screaming out to God? Because first of all, two things. Number one, to let us know that God exists. These angels are screaming out to God. That God exists. Number two, that God is good. They're screaming out to him. They want to come closer to him. They want to come close. And number three, that we should get excited too, at least a little bit. We just don't realize, we don't have the awareness that the angels have, but at least we know that the angels do have this awareness. It's like if the doctor tells you to do something, so if you believe in the doctor, you don't understand what's going on. But the doctor says, listen, what you have to do is eat 2 carrots every day and everything will be okay. What's a carrot got to do with, I have back pains, I have eyes, my eyes can't see, I eat 2 carrots. What does it have to? But the doctor knows what's going on. So therefore, you get excited. 2 carrots, where can I get carrots at? Where? The same thing, you see that the angels, they know what's going on. And you believe that it's true with the angels, that they're getting excited about something. The angels can't be bribed or anything. That's all. They're really interested in true good. So we see that this is true good. So we say, okay, we believe the angels. We also get excited. The difference, of course, is that with the doctor, he knows things that I don't know. But the angels, they're interested in God, and we know God also. God is the same. God that's creating the angels is creating us. So that's why the angels say one time that all they want is one thing. They want to see the glory of God. The angels, it's a natural thing by them. This is also found in every person. And this is the fire which is in the heart of every single Jew. Just like the body of man is composed of these 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water. And the animal soul also is composed of these 4 levels. 1 minute. Let me get the next page over here. Four levels spiritually of what's called Noga. Noga means of nature. Cain, also the godly soul, also has these. So just like in your what's called your animal soul, your natural soul, that you get excited about things, and sometimes you can get really excited about things, and you can really get flaming excited about about things in this world. You see how people are excited about their basketball team or whatever it is. They're excited right on it. So the same thing, the godly soul also in Jews has the same. They can get as excited about God as normal people get excited about their soccer team or whatever. And the soccer team, you see, right? And it's your team. You see your guys are winning. You feel great, right? God, you don't see. Well, the Jews have what's called a godly soul, and it does see God, and it does feel God, and it does get excited about God, and it can get excited. That's the fire of the godly soul. It can get excited. God is creating us. God is even creating my soccer team, right? So you get, and that's what that's what's called the fire. That's in the heart. And the Mishkan, the source, the place where the element of water is, that's in the brain. The heart is in the fire is in the heart. This idea of these 4 elements. 1 minute. 4 elements is not equal in every person. Some people are more calm, and that's water. Some people are more like fire. And this is like, for instance, gachalim. This is like glowing coals. The glowing coals there's fire inside of them, but v'yesh gachalim, sometimes there's you can see glowing coals, and then sometimes there's coals that they're not glowing. They're umamot. They're warm, but you can't see the fire. They just have a little tiny spark inside. What do you have to do? You have to blow on the coal, and that lights up the fire. But nevertheless, there's coals which have a little spark of fire inside. Therefore, when you blow on these, when you put wind on these coals strong, then it'll make them grow up, make them flame up. The same thing in our soul. Every Jew has a flame of God inside. Sometimes the flame is more revealed. Sometimes the flame is less revealed. But what is this flame? This flame is a desire for God. Just like the angels are flaming up for something that they love, Kamokin, similarly, is also Binyan Nefesh Elokis, the godly soul, which is in a person. Sheyesh Yasoda Eish, there's the fire in his heart, and this gets stronger and stronger, but you have to put a wind on it. What is it? The fire which is in the heart of a person, which is concealed. This is like coals which are almost extinguished, only have a little spark, but it still is there in every Jew without exception. And therefore, when wind is blown on it strong, then a person can get excited about it. What is this? The same thing, the godly soul of a person. You have to make it, you have to light it up. How do you light it up? By the heart can be revealed only when you put a wind on it. You have to blow a strong wind on it. And this is what? Prayer. The whole idea of prayer is blowing on this coal of godliness, which is desire for God, which is inside of us, which seems to be totally out. But the more you think about God, and the more you think about how the angels are crying out to God, and you think about how God took us out of Egypt, and that God gave us the Torah, and that God is with us all the time, and that God protects us, and you start maybe to believe, maybe it's true. Maybe it's true. And then you start to realize, listen, if this is really true, if it's really true that God really does exist, and that God is really creating me, and that God really cares about me, and that God is infinitely good, and God is giving me life, and God and the angels are all crying out to God because they all feel, if this is really true, this is amazing. This is amazing. And the more you start to realize that, listen, these rabbis who write this, Isaiah, they're not trying to fool me. This is not that he took some sort of a drug and he had a vision, an experience, right? This is not a short circuit of my my brain, right? That gives me all these feelings and ideas and things. This is really real. When you start to feel this, listen, this is really real, and that God is infinitely good, and the angels know He's really good, and I should know it even more. I'm closer to God than the angels. The Jews are the sons of God. And then that's when you think about it. That's like blowing on the coal. This is when a person thinks about the greatness of God, how it is that God spoke and created the world, how God said one word and everything existed. This is thinking about Hidbonenut, contemplate in your prayer. First of all, you got to translate the words of the prayers. And then you start to think that, hey, this is really relevant to me. You can start to love God with all of your heart, like it says in Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael. Understand, Jews, God is our God. God is one. You will love God with all of your heart. That's the next sentence. This all, when you think about this, this is like the bellows that blow on the apparently extinguished coal. You blow on this little spark which is inside of it, which is there inside of every Jew. Then you can come to love God with all of your heart. It reveals this little spark of fire, which is inside of the heart of every Jew, and you become excited. You become excited, and you begin to see God in everything. That's what it means. I will be made holy inside of every Jew. What does it mean inside? In the inside of your heart. In the inside of your heart, you feel sovev kalmin. Betoch Israel, inside of the depth of your heart, it's there. But you have to use the bellows and thinking, which is thinking about God when in the prayers, especially in Shemon Esrei. You have to open up a Jewish prayer book and see what we're talking about, the two prayers before Shemon Esrei. But really, all the Psalms, before this King Psalm, that it's found in every single Jew. This is inside of the inside point of your heart. Then the inside point of your heart will flame up like a flaming fire when you look at the glory and the beauty of God. Therefore, that means I will be made holy. My holiness, Sovev Kalmin, will light up inside of the soul of every Jew. His bonus by being this thinking how God is so holy, and it'll be in the inside of your heart. That's when you say, Kodesh, that's the first group of angels that say God is holy one time. And in a man, this is what we call us, that's called loving God with all of your heart. This is revealing the inside of your heart in a revealed way. That's the first level of love. Loving God with all of your heart. First. Second. That's the first time saying Kodesh. That's the first time. Okay. What is the second time saying Kodesh? Kodesh, Kodesh, two? 1 second. This we're going to talk about tomorrow. Here we go. And afterwards, there's the second group of angels. They say 2 times holy. What does that mean? Well, that means bringing God into the world. That's a higher level of love of God, higher level of love of God. And we're going to talk about that, God willing, tomorrow. And now we're going to do the Devar Malchut.